Let's hear it again for Tiffany Wilson. And our incredible music. I always feel so grateful to share ministry with you all. Thank you. Thank you. So we are continuing in our archetypal study, and this month it's all about the explorer. And the explorer is that pattern that's in us that is ready to go beyond borders and boundaries. Welcome back from Vietnam, Lynn and Gary. Going beyond boundaries and borders. And this actually is the most common archetypal pattern. It's about 10% of the population, but the truth is we all jump into this explorer archetypal pattern when we're children and we're beginning to discover the world. And any time that we venture out and go beyond what is known and go beyond those boundaries, it's what calls us to leave our homes and to try new things. And the human condition is such that we will never stop exploring, right? As long as we're breathing, as long as we're here, we're going to continue to explore. Now, we may take breaks once in a while, but we're always called out of what is known into the unknown. And the truth is that we can't really explore without also increasing our consciousness and our understanding of God and the universe and the world. So the more that we explore in the outer world, the more our inner world also begins to expand. Because as within, so without, as above, so below. And this is the true manifestation of the kingdom of God on earth, is this constant expansion and exploration. Now, according to Nyla Smith, there are 3 different levels of the explorer archetypal pattern. And the first level is the one that I've already talked about, which is just that willingness to go beyond the borders. It's just a willingness to move out there, to travel, to get out in nature. The second level is expressed when the exploration turns more inward and one begins the wondering of what makes each one of us unique. It's the process of seeking our own individuality. So that's level 2. And then level 3 is kind of reaching the journey of really knowing who we are at our core level, at our soul level, and having the freedom then to fully express our uniqueness. So in every movie, in every myth, in every story, and in every life, the protagonist, which is you, is called out of ordinary circumstances to go on a journey, right? I mean, every movie that we see, every book that we read, if our character is the same at the beginning of the movie as it is at the end, it's not a very good movie, right? Every character needs to go through some kind of transformation. And when we are called out of our own circumstances, we too go through that kind of transformation. So how many times have you stepped out into the unknown in your life and been changed? Just, you don't have to answer it, but just think about that. And how often have you had to step out in faith? So the story of stepping out in faith is as old as humankind, and it begins in Genesis with Abram, who is called out of the land of Haran. And I want to share with you from Genesis 12. Now the Lord said to Abram, "Go from your country and your kindred and your father's house to the land that I will show you. And I will make of you a great nation, and I will bless you and make your name great so that you will be a blessing." So he is called to leave his home. He's called to leave where he's been his whole life. And God makes this promise to him that he's going to have as many descendants as there are grains of sand. That he's going to have as many descendants as there are stars in the heavens. Now the thing is, Abram is like 75 years old. So it's like, that's kind of a crazy promise that God is calling him out. And yet, he leaves. He follows this call. He follows this journey, even though the promise and the call seems absurd. So like Abram, our dreams call us out of our own personal land of Hebron. And it's our dreams that call us out of the ordinary and into the world of expansion. How many times have you been called out of your ordinary life of Hebron into something wider and vaster? Perhaps when you fell in love and you were willing to take a chance, or you wanted to venture out and live in a different city or a different state, or go back to school. Those are all the ways that the explorer archetype starts to kick in and move out. And the other side of this is what holds you back from fulfilling your dreams or exploring or taking a chance. And it's probably the same for all of us. It's the big fear, right? Fear is what can stop us. It's fear of the unknown. How many times have you allowed fear to stop you from doing something before you even got started? Or how many times do we allow fear to freeze us or paralyze us or stop us or hold on to what is because we're not willing or we're afraid to step out into the unknown? So the explorer archetypal pattern is the one that calls us to face our fears, and it calls us to step out in faith. So a man by the name of Chris Hadfield, when he was a child, he had a dream to be an astronaut. I mean, a lot of people probably have that dream, but he actually manifested this dream, and he did become an astronaut, and he lived on this space station for, I think, about 6 months. And you may know him because he's pretty popular on YouTube. He's the guy who sang the David Bowie song, Ground Control to Major Tom. Anybody seen that on YouTube? Because if not, Google it. It's amazing. It's an amazing song, but it's like 10 times more amazing to see somebody actually sing it from the space station. Now, so this is a dream that he had, again, since he was a little child, was to be an astronaut. And that's kind of a dangerous dream to have, really. And he said the morning of his launch, his first launch into space, he said, you realize by the end of the day that you're either going to be floating effortlessly in space or you'll be dead. I mean, really, can you imagine pursuing a dream like that? And the odds of a catastrophic event in the first 5 shuttle launches was 1 in 9. In the beginning, 1 in 9, and now by 1995 they were like 1 in 40. So it's a pretty dangerous and scary dream that he is pursuing here. And he describes what it's like to be launched in that rocket and to just feel that power. And for him, it's thrilling and it's exciting. It's not scary. But I think in order for Chris to follow his dreams, he had to face these fears. And Emily Cady, the writer of Lessons in Truth, said that we have 2 kinds of faith. And one faith is blind faith. And blind faith is when you just know, right? It's like you just know that you know that you know, and you don't know how you can explain it to anybody, but you know that everything's going to be okay, or you know you're going to get the job, or you know that things are going to work out, and you don't know the details, and you don't have to know the details. You just know things are going to happen. But she said there's also another kind of faith, and this is understanding faith. And understanding faith is based on the intellect. So when we don't have that feeling, it's like, so then how do you get the faith? One is to study spiritual law, but what NASA does in order for their astronauts, I think, to have faith, is they study every single scenario of everything that could possibly go wrong. And we're talking thousands of hours. So they're suited up, they're underwater, they're practicing as if they are in space, not only the things that are going right, but the things that are going wrong. They are in simulators that are practicing the things that are going right and the things that are going wrong. And he said, so by the time he actually takes his first spacewalk, he goes out there, he's on this spacewalk, and there's the Earth below him, and he said, it's definitely silent. It's so silent, but the colors and the textures of the Earth below are like so amazing. And there he is out on his first spacewalk, and all of a sudden he goes blind in his left eye. Now, a normal person would probably panic, right? Anyway, I want to share with you what he said. He said, I was outside on my first spacewalk when my left eye went blind. And suddenly my left eye slammed shut in such great pain, and I did not know why my eye wasn't working. Without gravity, tears don't fall. So you just get a bigger and bigger ball of whatever it is that get mixed into your tears until the eye eventually, the ball becomes so big and the surface tension so large that it crosses across the bridge of your nose into your other eye. And now he's blind in both eyes. If you're outside on a spacewalk and you're blinded, your natural reaction would be to panic, I think. It would make you nervous and worried. But this was not his case. He said, even if you're blinded, your natural panicky reaction doesn't happen. Because instead, you look around and you go, all right, I can see, I can't see, I can hear, and I can talk. And my colleague Scott's out here with me. He could get me back to the airlock if I need to. Eventually, whatever it was left his eyes. And he said when they got back into the space station, he had all this crud around his eyes, and they wiped it off. And what it turned out to be was some anti-fog that he had on his eyes. And it just clogged because there was no gravity. And he said from that point on, they used Johnson & Johnson, no more tears. But my point is that this is a very scary experience that he's having. And he's not afraid. He doesn't panic. He has faith that he's going to get through this experience. He has faith that it's all going to work out, that everybody's going to work with him to help him no matter what's happening in his situation, which is it wasn't dire, but it could have felt dire to him. And again, he said it's because NASA was willing to go through each scenario of what could go wrong. He describes coming back to Earth in the spaceship, and he said basically it's burning up as you're coming in. And he said basically you're riding a meteor. That's what you're doing. When you're coming back to Earth, you're a meteor. He said now riding a meteor would be scary, except for them they were laughing and they were having fun as they were flying back to Earth. Why? Because he said he understood every single piece of what was happening in the spaceship. He knew that if the first parachute didn't go off, the second one would. And when they hit the Earth, they end up going over and over and around on. And he said, you think that would be scary? But no, they expected it to happen and it was fun. So from this place of understanding faith, he's able to step into these kinds of experiences. And what's interesting to me is we can send out the Hubble and the Mars rover, and we can have all of our robots and telescopes and everything going out and looking at these things. But when we send a human out there, we get changed by their experience, don't we? We're the ones who have the experience. I mean, a robot can't sing ground control to Major Tom and have it mean the same thing that it does when Chris Hadfield's out there in the space station singing it down to Earth. Remember when the first images of the Earth started to appear? Well, it was a long time ago when we first walked on the moon in '69, and all of a sudden we could look back and we could see this planet. And it started to change our consciousness on Earth, didn't it? And the more pictures that we see, the more things that happen, the more we become connected. And it's again, as we're exploring and expanding into the outer universe and the outer world, the bigger the inner universe and the inner world gets. So by his going, by all those astronauts being up in those space stations, they are doing it for all of us. So Abram, he left his home, and he ventured out by the call of God. He represents faith, really, in the Old Testament. His name is synonymous with faith. And he had many challenges, many tests that he had to overcome as he's seeking this new land. And the truth is, even though Abram is supposed to have faith and step out, the truth is he fails miserably many times. Just as we sometimes fail miserably when we step out and it's like, well, maybe not, and we step back. So an example of this is he goes into Egypt and his wife is with him, and apparently his wife is gorgeous. And so he's a little afraid because he's like, well, we're going into Egypt and my wife is really pretty and I think they're going to kill me so they can get to my wife. So I know, he says to his wife, we'll tell everybody that you're my sister, and then that way we'll be fine. And so sure enough, he tells the Pharaoh, and she ends up living in the palace, and pretty soon all these plagues start befalling the Pharaoh and his family, and he figures out that there's this God that's not really happy about what's going on. And he says, why didn't you tell me in the first place that Sarai was your wife and not your sister, and why he was afraid? So it's a line that we walk, isn't it? It's a tightrope that we walk between faith and fear. And as Chris Hadfield did, as Nassau does, if there is something before you right now that you are seeking to do, or something that's calling you out from the land of Hebron, that something is saying, hey, you need to come out here a little further, if there's something that's stopping you because you're afraid, pretend you work for NASA and look at every possible scenario that could go right, but could also maybe go wrong. And I believe what that does is it can kick in understanding faith. If we don't have the blind faith to move us forward, it can help us to kick that in. Imagine that God is saying to you, and not just to Abram. So the Lord God said to George, leave your country, and I will make of you a great nation, and I will bless you. What if God said, now the Lord said to James, now the Lord said to Rick, the Lord, that inner spirit, that inner guidance is calling each one of us out in our own unique and individual way. And the question is, are we going to say, yep, I'm stepping out in faith, or no, I think I'm going to stay right here? Because we cannot explore without also expanding our consciousness and increasing our understanding of God and the universe. This is the true and only manifestation of the kingdom of God. So may we each go out and kick in that archetypal pattern of the explorer. Because as you explore, again, you're not only expanding the outer, you're expanding the inner, and you're not only doing it for yourself, but you're taking us all with you. So happy exploring.